Oh, hello. My name is Mara, and welcome to Books Like Whoa. So Mission Marple continues this week with A Murder is Announced by Agatha Christie. So this was supposed to be a buddy read with the protagonist, and I think she and I still will try to connect, but we haven't yet. But anyway, I just mentioned that because the protagonist is fantastic. She is one of the hosts of March Mystery Madness, which is a readathon happening this month for mystery reading. I couldn't be a full host this year just because of life. But anyway, I am trying to read more mysteries this month, and I wanted to make sure that she and I at least tried to do a buddy read at some point in Mission Marple, because Miss Marple is considered to be like one of the bases of the sort of cozy mystery genre, and the protagonist is the reigning queen of cozy mysteries here on BookTube, I feel like. So if you also like cozy mysteries in general and you're not following the protagonist, you definitely should be. So also she's just good people, so I think you would enjoy her channel. Anyway, that being said, I am talking about A Murder is Announced this week, which is like a classic Marple entry, I feel like, in the Marple canon. If you've never watched one of these before, what I usually do for my Agatha Christie reviews is that I will take you in a plot synopsis up roundabouts to where we find a body. I will then talk about some character details, not as much this time because I'm just not as interested in that, but if you consider any of that to be spoilers, be forewarned. And then mostly what I talk about are sort of like the themes and kind of like what this made me think about, or like connections that this made me have to the rest of the Christie oeuvre, or how it connects to its historical time period, that kind of stuff. So that's what we will do today. I also do at the end of these videos have a section where I will warn you that it is about to get very spoilery, that is like what's happening. And at that point, I will feel free to spoil anything in the Christie canon. I make no promises, no guarantees. I will just talk about whatever I want to regarding Agatha Christie. So with all that being said, let's get into a very quick plot synopsis, because this can be summed up pretty quickly, and then we'll talk about some of my thoughts. So A Murder is Announced is one of those books that is titled very aptly in the Christie canon, because it literally is telling you exactly what happens in this book, which is that in the little town of Chipping Cleghorn, one day a announcement appears in the local newspaper basically saying, like, let's actually, you know what, let me look it up so I can tell you exactly what this announcement says. A murder is announced and will take place on Friday, October 29th at Little Paddocks at 6:30 p.m. Friends, please accept this, the only invitation. So very sensationalized. Everybody thinks that this is probably some sort of like joke, or they're not totally sure what this is, but everybody shows up, of course, because they want to find out what's happening. And Little Paddocks is like one of the grand houses or whatever, like named houses in this town, and it's owned by Letitia Blackhorn, I think is her name. Blacklock, sorry, Letitia Blacklock. And there's a bunch of her relatives who live here as well, like, oh God, relatives and friends. Like Dora Bunner is her friend, like an old time school friend. She's got like a nephew, I think it's her nephew, or like a cousin, Patrick, and then his sister Julia Simmons live there. I think at one point her sister Charlotte lived there, but Charlotte is dead. She's got like a bunch of like assorted family members around in this book, but like that's her family home, and like she has servants, she has the whole deal, and this is where this murder is going to take place. So everybody assembles, the lights go out, bang, bang, they wake up. Somebody tried to fire at Letitia, but instead there's this young man who is dead, and hijinks ensue from there. And of course, eventually Miss Marple is called in and figures out who done it. So with that being said, like I said, very short synopsis because we get to the body pretty darn quickly. I will say that there are more bodies that follow, as is often wont to happen in an Agatha Christie novel. Bitch is pretty savage. So yeah, we kind of go from there, and eventually we get it solved. So let's dive into what my overall thoughts are and then some themes. So I will say that I liked this better than The Moving Finger. So I would now say that I would go The Murder at the Vicarage, The 13 Problems, The Body in the Library, A Murder is Announced, and then The Moving Finger is now in last place. But I did give both of the last two, The Moving Finger and A Murder is Announced, I gave them both 3.5 stars. So I did like this one a little bit better, in part because this is actually a Miss Marple book. I liked the interaction between Marple and Inspector Craddock, and everything with Marple in this I liked a lot better. That being said, I do think that this book is quite deficient in its character development overall. There's a couple of exceptions to that. Like I quite liked Bunny, Dora Bunner. I thought she was nice, like a good character, and I liked Philippa. I thought that she was also a good character. But in general, I think that the characters are kind of lacking in this one. The murder itself, like the way that all works out, I think is done really nicely. So in that respect, I did enjoy that part of this book. And I do think it's sort of a classic for a reason, and I'll get to that in the spoilery section. Then in terms of just like themes though that I was noticing, what I really liked about this book is that it seems like it's a much more kind of settled in depiction of post-World War II British life. So this is the first Marple book where I really think you have a sense of the time period, which I liked a lot. And in contrast to something like Taken at the Flood, which is also post-World War II and talks a lot about the realities of living under rationing and all that kind of stuff, like that one was very dour, it felt like. Whereas this one I think feels a lot more just sort of like lived in and less bleak. So like you get a lot of discussion of people like trading clothing coupons and like trading different types of food, like to make their food rationing stuff go further. Like you get that. And I think you definitely do have a sense of sort of like dissipated wealth, which is also sort of a part of this period in British history. So you have all of that, but it doesn't feel as like melancholy. And so I could just sort of enjoy those historical details and not just feel sort of weighed down by them. So I enjoyed all of that. And I just realized that the other big theme I wanted to talk about connects to what I've been seeing kind of overall in the Marple reread, like the lens through which I'm reading this. So I guess that probably does belong in the spoiler section. So I misrepresented. I thought that I would have more non-spoilery things to talk about. But overall, I do think that this is a classic Agatha Christie, like definitely you should read this. I enjoyed it and I remembered it fondly. And I think that I remember it now, like when I think about it now, I see that I don't think that it is really a great Christie, but it is sort of like a classic Christie, if that makes sense. I don't think that this is one of her better books, but I do see why it is so well loved and like why it is remembered so much. So with that being said, let me transition to spoilers real quick. So what I wanted to say was that I do think that this book has some like Christie hallmarks, one of them being the kind of confusion of names. So this happens on so many different levels in this book, between the Pip and Emma piece, but then also the Letty Lottie of it all. And I remember in my first reading of this, noticing the Letty Lottie bit and thinking that either Lottie was some sort of nickname for Letitia that I just wasn't familiar with, or B, that Dora just like was forgetful, which is I think what the text wants you to know, or C, that maybe it was some sort of printing error. And this is one of the first Christies I read, so I didn't know her work enough yet to know that if you're noticing some kind of discrepancy, you should probably pay close attention to it. And so I was delighted at the end that was one of the key clues, even though I had kind of read what it was. So I immediately remembered that in my rereading of this, of like, oh yeah, this is the one where there's that Letty Lottie thing. So I think that's really interesting. And I do think that this whole like naming ambiguity, like either the wrong name or somebody assuming that a name is either male or female, is definitely something you see in a lot of Christie. Like the one that most notably comes to mind for me is Parallel and House. But yeah, I think that that's like a classic Christie twist that people really enjoy in this particular book. I do think that the whole like, there's a lot of like machinations to make this plot work that feels a little labored, but it is fun. You know what I mean? Like, even if it's sort of like, okay, really, it's fun, so I'm willing to give it a pass. Like, in a murder mystery, I would always want the author to err on the side of like delighting me with the sort of like, oh my gosh, versus just sort of like having a really mundane explanation. So like, I'm willing to roll with that. And then in terms of just like thematically, the thing I wanted to talk about was how this ties into my like reading of these books as like an expression of Christie's inner female rage. And holy shit, this definitely continues that theme, because once again, we have a savage AF woman at the heart of whodunit. So like, Letitia is a stone cold, like, vicious murderer. And it's wrapped up in this very cozy package, but like, just like think about like the sheer number of different methods she uses to kill people or attempt to, like, she shoots dude who may like, I guess that we ultimately established he does recognize her, but like, what a plot contrivance. Anyway, Swiss dude. And so she shoots him. She lures him to her home under false pretenses and shoots him. She poisons her oldest and best friend. Also, how do we know that she didn't kill Lottie? Just saying. We don't know. Anyway, so she's willing to kill Dora. She's willing to kill anyone. Then she shoots, she poisons, she strangles poor Miss Murder, whatever. I never knew how to say that name, but the little old spinster lady who realizes an important clue, strangles her, and then is in the process of drowning Mitzi. So like, if we're talking about just like sheer brutality of a female killer, like this is not like, oh, poison is a woman's weapon, like, which is often a byword in Christie. Not this time, girl. Like this time she's going full stabby. And I just think that this plays very nicely into the whole like reading that one can, and I guess I am doing, of these books, is just like an expression of the female anger at being constantly underestimated or thwarted or having to like work around systems to get what they want in this world. Anger, like existential anger at the situations that the patriarchy puts women in. Like this is how I am reading these books, and every book this gets to be a stronger and stronger reading. Now the next one, not as much when we get to They Do It With Mirrors, but for now, these first 5 books like solidly fit this pattern. So anyway, I just was like, damn, like Letitia is like a stone cold killer, and it is amazing how like light and airy Agatha Christie is able to keep her tone while having that amount of brutality in a book. So yeah, overall, I enjoyed this. Like I had a lot of fondness for this book going in, which is like validated and maintained through this reread. And I would recommend this as something that people like. This is like I was saying, a classic Christie, so I totally see why people enjoy it, and it sort of is often like, I think it's frequently a first or an early read in people's encounters with Agatha, and I think it deservedly so. It makes sense to me that this is, you know, something that's pretty beloved among the Christie fans. So yeah. Anyway, that is my thoughts on A Murder Is Announced. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, including the link to the Goodreads group if you want to read along with other people who are doing this little project. So, hope you guys are enjoying, and I guess I will just talk to you soon. Bye!